The following is a project of our nonprofit newsroom. Support Midcoast Morning and local community-centered journalism today by signing up to be a monthly sustaining donor at CHLY.ca/donate. It doesn't take much money to support local news.
A temporary housing site in Cedar is getting ready to welcome 50 people over the coming months. 1300 Island Highway, across the road from Rona, is going to be operated by the nonprofit Connective Support Society. It's one of 4 temporary housing sites in Nanaimo covered under the provincial HEARTH and HEARTH program, meant to respond to homelessness. The Ministry of Housing and the City of Nanaimo signed a memorandum of understanding related to the program in January 2024. On Tuesday, I toured the site at 1300 Island Highway. People will live in 25 modular buildings, each of which has 2 separate units. Each unit contains a small room with a bed, a heating and cooling unit, and several electrical outlets. There are bathrooms and showers in separate units. There are also laundry rooms and a larger common space. Outside there are bike racks and some planters and picnic tables. Following the tour, I spoke with a pair of Connective staff about how the facility will be run.
My name is Andrew Ferguson. I am the Regional Director of Vancouver Island for Connective Support Society.
My name is Anne-Marie Tosh, and I am the Senior Program Manager for Vancouver Island for Connective Support Society.
And we are here. We are chatting on site at 1300 Island Highway. We're across from Rona. We are in Cedar, and you are supervising some of the work as we're getting ready for people to move into this site. Do you have an idea of when the first folks might move in?
You know, we are looking at like sort of those last final stages of getting up to operations. At the same time, we did have an accident with our gate about a week ago now. So that is like one of the main things that we need sort of like squared away before we can start welcoming people in. So we're not working on a sort of a specific date right now, but we're working with the contracting companies that are on site, our staff, to get everything up and running as quickly as possible.
Do you already have an idea of who is going to be moving into the site?
A lot of the folks that we have spoken to through people that are coming into this community are actually going through what's called a community placement, a committee placement. And so we have spoken to a lot of service providers and housing providers that put their name forward, and it goes through a referral process. And those people have actually found stability in like either stabilization beds or shelters and have already spoken to somebody. So they have either been homeless for quite some time and have gotten to know a lot of the shelter providers. So those referrals are brought forward to us, and then we speak about what their vulnerabilities are, what their history is, what they could do to better fit into a community, and then there's an approval process to that. So a lot of those folks are either coming from already stability from shelters.
So the idea is there might be folks who have been staying at, say, the Unitarian shelter in Nanaimo, the temporary winter shelter that's been operating at the hub on Nickel Street. Folks who have been in those situations are probably the biggest cohort of folks who are going to be moving in here?
They're the biggest cohort of folks, and then there is a small percentage of people that will be coming in from encampments.
If I am going to move in here, 1300 Island Highway, what are the kind of responsibilities and things I have to bring to the table?
Where I would maybe start with, so we'll take Joe, for instance, and Joe has, been experiencing homelessness for, say, a year or something like that. And you've gone through that process of, you've been referred to that community assessment table. That's been discussed. That prioritization has happened so that you're in a place now where that committee has selected Joe to move into 1300 Island Highway. From there, what we would do is we would coordinate with, usually it's the referral partner. So it would be, it could be, say, the Unitarian shelter. And bring that person, bring Joe to the site, kind of do a walkthrough. This is the amenity space. This is where the sort of living quarters are. Here's where all the showers and the bathrooms are. We'd go through our program agreement with them, which sort of lines out sort of the basic expectations of, our guest policy, our pet policy, where you store your bike, where you might store your belongings in your living quarters, going through sort of all those sort of logistical components of it. And then from that place, we kind of make a determination together, this is the right place for you to come, because people still have that self-determination. They could go through that whole process and say, I don't want to live here. I don't want to be here. And they have that right to do so. And then, so say Joe gets to that place and he says, I'm willing to sign this program agreement, willing to come stay here. And then what we do is settle that person in, sort of pick a date. Say we do that meet and greet on Monday. They might move in on like Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll go through a process where we heat treat their belongings, which combats pests and bed bugs, and then allow them to come in. And then from there, we work on a personalized service plan that they're meant to engage in. And that looks a lot like a needs assessment and a strengths assessment, and identifying, what's the path for you, for Joe, and then working on that together. And that's amenable. Like, if we get 3 months down the line and we say, Joe says this plan's not really working, or we know, we're hitting this block, let's maybe try a different way. And then we have those discussions, and we have a full staffing complement to do that, between tenant support workers, program management staff, program coordinator, mental health case manager, our cultural liaison worker. In terms of a staffing complement on site, how many folks are going to be working here throughout the day on kind of a 24/7 hour basis? What does the staffing look like? Yeah. To talk a little bit about the staffing complement. So there are 3 tenant support workers 24/7. They have a bit of a rotating schedule, so that there's a chance for the oncoming staff to be debriefed by someone from the previous shift. What that does is it gives sort of that continuity for folks. Say they're coming in, they work Friday through Monday, and they haven't been here in 3 days. So they get that sort of half an hour with the previous staff to get a sense of like, what's happened while I've been away. So that is 24/7. There are 2 program managers. I believe that they are 7 days a week.
They're 5 days a week.
5 days a week.
Yeah. So we have a program coordinator filling in for when the program managers are not here.
Right. And then both our cultural liaison worker as well as our mental health case manager are both full-time positions. So they work a typical sort of Monday to Friday business hour style role. And then we also have our cooks who provide 2 meals a day for the site. People are going to get lunch and dinner, I understand, 7 days a week? Yeah, so people are going to be able to receive lunch and dinner. One of the things that you probably noted in your walk-around tour with Emery is that there's not actually a kitchen here. So what we've done is we've created basically a whole food delivery system from our supportive housing site at Cornerstone to transport lunch and dinner here, serve them hot, and then sort of pack everything up, bring it all back, and then help with the cleanup. So it was a bit like starting its own catering company a little bit, but it was really important that just because there's no kitchen facilities on site, like there were a number of opportunities for us to be able to sort of make it work and make it manageable, so that people could have that sort of added stability to their lives. What's the plan for how people are going to eat breakfast if there's 2 meals a day and there's no kitchen facilities on site? Yeah. Part of it is, we'll be able to put out coffee and tea and things like that in the morning. But providing 2 meals a day really gives people that added independence of, you're managing, one of your 3 meals a day. It could be, you're going out and buying food, or and storing it, and like, you're having yourself, a yogurt in the morning and things like that. So part of it is sort of building in and keeping that independence of managing some of your own meals.
But like with no fridge or no like cutting board or no like element, how do you manage that? Is it one thing it feels like to be independent, but then it's another thing to like not. It doesn't sound like you have the chance to do some of those things.
Yeah, I think once we start moving people in, we're going to kind of look at like, can we add mini fridges to the rooms and things like that, so they are able to store sort of a small amount of product in their room, so they are able to sort of do some of those things. But it is quite restrictive in the sense that you don't have your own kitchen and things like that. So we're working on a couple different options of like what to provide. Part of it is like trying to maintain that independence that I was talking about, but also, we can provide dry cereal and milk and things like that. So those are all kind of options on the table for us to sort of figure out what does that third meal look like if people need it.
We do also have the capacity to store a lot of food. So if we do want to do that, and it's something that is going to work within the staff, we do have the option of storing yogurts and milk and dry goods as well. So breakfast would probably look like something that would be provided by the staff.
You talked earlier about the program agreement someone needs to sign. What are the rules in terms of, say, guests or pets or partners, those sorts of things?
So at this time, the program agreement is for one person. So these are one-person units. So it's not going to be you. Although you can have a partner living on site, and that partner can also stay with you, they will have to have a separate unit. As far as guests go, we have, again, the units are quite small, and for us to maintain the safety for the residents living here, we've chosen to not have guests come on site just because of the size and the safety. It's not something we can accommodate at this time. The same idea applies to pets. Because the units are quite small, we feel that the pets would not be a great area for pets to live. It's just not something that we can accommodate. If the program agreement is something that you are here to work on your goals and you're here to work on the things that are going to give you the self-determination to reach those goals and to move to a better place, and we're trying to remove the barriers that people will have in order to go back into the community. So allowing pets also, it creates a barrier for you to get housing if that's something that you're looking for.
What's the plan on how folks will spend their time during a day?
Well, that's a really big question, because that all the people that are coming here, we don't put people in a box. So if you look at people from a client-centered perspective, they are all individuals with all individual needs, coming from all individual places with their own trauma or their own ideas or their own goals, or things that if you were to speak to someone who is struggling with homelessness, or who has mental health issues, physical health issues, or is struggling with substance use, they all have a story. None of those stories are the same. I have never heard the same story come from anybody of all the people that I've spoken to. And that carries over into their homes and their needs and their goals and what they want to do in their life. So to say that there's an expectation and that you have to meet certain things at a certain time, that's not something that we want to do. It's more like having those conversations. What is it? Is it skill building that's going to be something for you? Is it employment that's going to be something that you've wanted to work? Once there's that housing first model, right? When somebody hasn't had their own space and hasn't had a door to lock behind them, and once you stabilize in that space, all of a sudden it seems like you want to do other things and meet those goals that you've always wanted to work on. People are at a different pace as well. Not everybody is like, some people are leaps and bounds. Other people, just learning how to wash your clothes again is something that's going to take some time, right? So all that to say that a typical day is going to be different for everybody. It depends on what those goals are going to look like. They're going to be working with staff in order to find out what those are as well, right? I think that might be a bit vague. And the reason why it's vague is because that for me to give you a step-by-step of what somebody's day is going to look like, I would have to do that on a person-by-person case basis.
What then are some of the maybe options? So like if someone comes to the site, there's a room that they've got, there's a bed, and obviously, they have the freedom to come and go from the site whenever they want. But beyond that, like what are the things that they could do to enhance their life on site? What are the options available to them?
Yeah, okay. So using our staff and our cultural support worker and mental health and wellness facilitator. So what they're doing is they're creating an assessment plan with somebody, and that's going to be done probably within the first month of them moving in. So stabilization is the key and the first step. And then after that and getting those assessments. What does that look like for you? So they have outreach services available for them, as well as obviously lunch and dinner. But what are those? So the outreach services may be liaising with cultural supports and out in the community. It may mean going to meet somebody for an employment program. It may mean going to a life skills program. It may mean going to the library to do research, depending on what those knows. But that will be available to them depending on what those needs are.
We're in Chase River. There is a mini mall. Well, there are a couple of mini malls right across the street. Beyond those, it's not necessarily the most accessible neighborhood in terms of getting to other services, either on foot or with some kind of transit. How have you factored that into the plan for the site?
Yeah, it's actually it's important to sort of recognize that people will have the services and they'll have the things that they want to maybe get to in their days. I think it's the 19. I'm not sure which bus it is exactly that will take you down to Port Place Mall behind the Country Grocer. But that is like the main transportation by like public transportation down to downtown, down to other areas of Nanaimo. But it is something that we think about when people leave the site. If you're on disability, do you have your transit pass? Are there ways that we can help with transportation that are additional to that? Are there other programs or other services that you're connected to that provide outreach and transportation services? Because those are all options as well for folks.
Mm-hmm. We don't have the option of choosing the site that we want. This is the site that's given to us, basically, to support the people. But to echo what Andrew was saying, obviously it's about being able to provide those resources and reaching out to the resources that can do those things. So a lot of people have outreach services that they provide, and a lot of teams that come out here and they're able to provide those transportation services to folks that maybe are not capable of taking the bus. I think there is a number of transits that do come out this way, but absolutely it's just a bit more of being resourceful.
Is there a role that people living in Chase River or Nanaimo more generally can play in ensuring that this site is a success for the people who come and live here?
I've already seen that. We had some engagements a couple of weeks ago, and the community, the outpouring of support that we've received from a lot of the community members. I had some ladies come here that brought 50 plants for each room. And just being that good neighbor. And now that goes both ways, obviously, right? It's how do we ensure the residents are are part of the community as well. But we've had so many people reach out and just say, we want to show support to this. Now, I know that there's a lot of people that, there's always going to be people that have fear and, don't want change, or maybe are concerned about what new people are going to look like in their community. But we have had more people come and say, we'd like to meet the residents. How can I volunteer? We had people say we'd like to reach out to the Horticultural Society and provide dirt for the garden beds that are going to be outside. It's just that outpouring. And that's, I think, how you build a community, is by being involved.
What does success look like for you in the operation of the site? If we're having a similar conversation and sitting down like a year from now, what do you hope has happened? What does it look like for things to have gone well?
Success looks like a seamless community. So basically, it's an integration of a community that becomes operational, and it's just seamless, and it's just part of the community at this point. We have the experience with Cornerstone where there was a lot of resistance at first, and we had a lot of fear and of the unknown, and we spoke to a lot of the community members and spoke to a lot of the businesses, and throughout that communication and that sense of being a good neighbor, it's now just an apartment building, and people just view it that way. They don't have that fear that they used to, because they've gotten to know a lot of the people that live there and the residents, and they've seen all of the residents in their communities and using their businesses and things like that. So they got to know it. So success for me looks like that. It's the seamless integration of this within the community, and that people are seen as just Chase River community members.
There have been a number of other modular housing sites on Vancouver Island for a number of years now. There's one called The Village in Duncan. In Nanaimo, people might think of the one on Terminal. Newcastle, people might think of Nikeo. Those sites have been running now for years and years and years. What kind of lessons did you take from other places as you get ready to launch this?
Well, I would tell you, when we went and toured the village in Duncan, I'm not sure how long ago that was now, but we went and toured them. And as we were walking through with, I believe it must have been the program manager there. And I'm not sure if you've seen them, but they're kind of like little cul-de-sacs, right? And everyone's kind of facing each other in these little cul-de-sacs. And then I think we only saw the one site where it's down by the mall. And when we looked at that and we looked at this site, we took that sort of like how to build in community, and how to, like, if you walk through this site, like, you'll see they're kind of like built almost like streets. Neighbors face each other. They're able to sort of communicate with one another. And it was a way, let's have this look this way, so that when people move in and when people start to reside here, that they'll, Joe will know Jane from across the way, right? And that was really important to us. For people when they come here, to be able to know and like meet the people that we're going to be around them. I think that was specifically for that Duncan site. I was really impressed by like their layout, how they had set things up. They had done like a number of like very ingenious ways of kind of getting it going, which were all like very much like really built into sort of like that almost community development side of, what does this inside these walls, what does this look like for us?
Is there anything else that you think it's important to bring to the conversation to let people know as you get ready to open this site here at 1300 Island Highway?
There is a misconception that I think that a lot of people have, that a lot of people that are moving into this site have high mental health acuity, or they have substance use issues, or a lot of the barriers that a lot of people, I think, have a stereotypical look of homelessness. We're seeing right now a lot of seniors that have become homeless due to loss of a partner, or like they can't pay their rent anymore because it's become an unsustainable, like Andrew said earlier, living in their vehicle and things like that. So it's about being open to all the complex and different individuals that are living in the homeless society, and that everybody has their own story and everybody has their own goals, and it's about how can we support those people into taking that next step. That's where my passion lies for this.
Anne-Marie Tosh is Senior Program Manager for Vancouver Island with Connective Support Society. Andrew Ferguson is Regional Director of Vancouver Island for Connective Support Society.
Midcoast Morning is made possible by the Community Radio Fund of Canada and generous listeners like you. With your support, we can expand Midcoast Morning from 2 to 3 original programs per week to cover local news, current affairs, and arts and culture.
We've been speaking about a new temporary housing site opening soon in Chase River. It's part of the provincial Heart and HEARTH program, which is funding 4 temporary housing sites in Nanaimo to respond to homelessness. I spoke with Heidi Hartman, Associate Vice President of Supportive Housing and Homelessness with BC Housing. Now, this site and a couple of others that are set to come to Nanaimo very, very soon are identified as temporary, and I'm wondering if you could tell me exactly what temporary means here.
Yes, so the HEART program, the Heart and HEARTH program, is about temporary housing. And what that means is we've got time in the interim that the temporary housing is in place is to support permanent housing solutions so that people have continuity of housing. In many communities, including Nanaimo, there's need to be able to bring people inside in a rapid way. And temporary housing creates the opportunity to be able to do that.
So when you say temporary, the implication is it's intended to be temporary for someone who moves in there, stabilizes themselves, and then goes to some other form of housing in the future.
Temporary can be 2 things. This is temporary housing in that it may not be at the hut site long term. We may be looking at other, there's a lot of opportunities due to the partnership with the city of Nanaimo for permanent housing. It is also temporary in that we will work with people, and if they no longer need the supports at supportive housing, or they can move into market housing with assistance from a rent supplement, we want to create that opportunity to do that.
And my understanding, I read in a document about this project that 3 years right now is how long it's set to be running if nothing else changes?
Correct. That's the timeline we're looking at.
Are there projects online or set to come online in the works in the future such that it's realistic that within 3 years, people who have moved into this site would be moving into new, more permanent facilities?
What I would say to that, we ensure housing continuity for people. So whether it's existing stock or new sites that are opening up, we'll ensure that the folks in 1300 do have a permanent housing option. There have been announcements. The complex care housing site at Boxwood is another example of more housing with supports coming to Nanaimo.
So the idea being if I move into 1300 Old Island Highway and I keep up with every program agreement, I won't, even if the site is temporary and closes down, BC Housing is committing to, I won't just be evicted through no fault of my own because the building closed down in 3 years because it was temporary without having somewhere else to live.
Housing continuity is definitely our priority. So we would work with the operator to ensure that there is another housing option, whether it's existing supportive housing or if somebody doesn't need those ongoing supports, maybe they can live in market housing with a rent supplement.
Yeah, on that front. So my understanding is people in 1300 Old Island Highway or Island Highway, they will pay rent in the form of a shelter allowance of around $500. So, if we're thinking about market rates, there's nowhere close to $500 that someone could afford. Could you tell me what are the systems in place to help someone be able to make that transition just financially?
Oh, great question. And that's, we recognize we need to have a variety of solutions to be able to support people. So you're correct. People do pay the shelter rate of rent in temporary housing. And if there is an opportunity that they don't need the supports within supportive housing, we do have rent supplements that are available to people to live in market housing and make it more affordable for them.
When this site was announced, there were some concerns from community groups that it's in Chase River. It's kind of in a place where you really wouldn't want to live if you didn't have a car because it would be really hard to get to a lot of things. What's the expectation for how people are going to be able to navigate that situation living here?
Well, I'd highlight that there are some folks that want to have that distance from town. And then I'd also highlight the fact that our supportive housing sites, like 1300, have 24-hour days, 7-day-a-week staff. There's life skills training, there's employment assistance, there's going to be connections to community services. So there are many services there. They'll receive their meals there. This is their home.
Community groups in Nanaimo, specifically the South End Community Association, they've raised concerns about the concentration and the size of individual supportive housing buildings in the south part of Nanaimo. I know the site we've been talking about today is even a little farther south than that. What is your response to concerns from the community that supportive housing buildings coming to Nanaimo have tended to end up, at least in greater numbers, in the south half of town?
We work with our municipal governments in either providing sites or collaborating with them when sites come forward. And we need shelters and supportive housing in all of our communities. The need is that significant. So we really, it's really about partnership. And when you speak to concerns about community members, that's why we create so many ways to be able to engage with the community. We have a Let's Talk page. We have a feedback email because we want to be responsive to concerns in community and engage and be responsive.
At a meeting or a presentation at a governance and priorities committee meeting Monday here in Nanaimo, a BC Housing presentation shared a stat that in Nanaimo, 112 people moved out of supportive housing in 2024-25. And under questioning from a city councillor, it came out that stat includes people who have died and that there would be, quote, quite a mix of outcomes in that 112 figure. Do you have figures on how many people in a community like Nanaimo are moving out of supportive housing with positive outcomes?
That is information that we are definitely working towards. I would highlight, Joe, that the focus for supportive housing is housing stability. These are folks that have not, have previously experienced homelessness. And provincially, our stats indicate that supportive housing is working, that there's over 90% of people in supportive housing that have remained housed. I think it's also important to remember that not everybody in supportive housing is going to not need supportive housing. There are people that need 24/7 supports for the rest of their lives, and supportive housing is going to be available for them. So we see it as a true success when we've got over 90% of people in the province who are in supportive housing remaining in housing, because we know that people are far less impactful in our communities if they have a roof over their head.
Also at that meeting, Councillor Paul Manley was asking about targets for affordable housing in addition to supportive housing. On that kind of, like, if it's fair to say, this next rung on the housing continuum, what is the role of BC Housing? What is the involvement of BC Housing in creating affordable housing? Are there specific targets in a community like Nanaimo? And we've heard a lot of announcements about specific sites and specific supportive housing facilities that will be coming to Nanaimo. Is there anything similar on the level of affordable housing or rent geared to income housing that BC Housing plays a role in?
Well, what I'll say to that is many folks think of BC Housing just as shelters and supportive housing, and we're so much more. We provide housing options along the continuum. So that includes the affordable housing that you're talking about. It also speaks to the rent supplements that I was referring to. So to your question, resources for Nanaimo, absolutely. There is the need. There continues to be the need. And we continue to work with our municipal partners on bringing forward affordable housing, shelters. Women's transition houses are another key priority for us. Indigenous housing. BC Housing covers the whole gamut of shelter and supportive housing, or shelter and affordable housing.
So this site is getting set to open soon at 1300 Island Highway. 50 spaces. Right now it's set to run for 3 years. What does success look like for that site if we're talking again here 3 years from now?
Oh, success is about that housing stability that I mentioned, that people that need housing remain housed. I know that our partners work really diligently to preserve tenancies and keep people in their housing units. Success also equals engagement with the community and this site working well within that neighborhood. We know the importance of community and connections, and that's another real success there.
Is there a plan for what's going to happen, or like a best practices, or in the best case scenario is 3 years from now, the 3 years are up, does this continue as temporary housing for a new set of people? Is the site redeveloped as permanent housing? Are those all possibilities? Just what is your expectation of what will actually happen in 3 years?
My expectation is continuity of housing for anybody who's in the housing, and that's what the next 3 years holds for us. What are the options to create permanent housing solutions? We know that we have really positive outcomes when we have purpose-built supportive housing. So how can we work to create those opportunities with our municipal partners?
Heidi Hartman, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Heidi Hartman is Associate Vice President of Supportive Housing and Homelessness with BC Housing. I spoke with her last Thursday. That's our show for the day. Thank you for joining me. I'm Joe Pugh, host and producer of Midcoast Morning. Jesse Woodward is our executive producer, and RB Frew is our technical advisor. You can sign up for CHLY's newsletter at chly.ca/subscribe. Our theme song is First One by local Nanaimo band Waste Management. If you have a story you'd like us to cover, email us at news@chly.ca. That's all for now. I'll talk to you on another Midcoast Morning.
This program acknowledges and gives thanks to the Snuneymuxw First Nation as we broadcast and podcast from their traditional territory. Thanks for listening.